The first rays of dawn slowly rise above the endless sands of Giza. For a brief moment, the desert is silent. Then, towering out of the golden horizon, the pyramids emerge ancient, mysterious, and almost impossible to comprehend. They have stood here for more than 4,000 years, watching empires rise and fall, surviving wars, storms, and the relentless passage of time. But before we begin today's journey, we'd love to know something about you. Where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it where you are right now? Let us know in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how people from every corner of the world come together to explore history. Now, imagine yourself standing here at sunrise, looking up at these colossal monuments. A question naturally comes to mind: how could people living more than 4,000 years ago build structures so enormous, so precise, and so enduring? Did they really accomplish this using nothing more than simple tools, determination, and remarkable engineering? Or is there some truth behind the countless legends that claim the pyramids were built with the help of extraterrestrials, a lost civilization, or knowledge that has long since vanished from the earth? For centuries, these questions have fascinated explorers, historians, engineers, and dreamers alike. But the real story may be even more astonishing than the myths, because this is not simply the story of giant stone tombs standing alone in the desert. It is the story of one of the greatest civilizations in human history, a civilization driven by extraordinary ambition, unwavering faith, unmatched engineering, and a king's desire to achieve immortality. Tonight we will travel back thousands of years to discover how the pyramids were truly built, who built them, why they were created, the secrets still hidden within their ancient walls, and why these magnificent monuments continue to challenge everything we think we know about the ancient world. So settle in, relax, and together let's journey into one of history's greatest mysteries. Long before the first pyramid pierced the Egyptian sky, before giant limestone blocks were stacked into monuments that would outlive empires, there was only a river. Every year, as the scorching African sun baked the surrounding desert, the Nile overflowed its banks. Instead of bringing destruction, the flood left behind a rich layer of dark, fertile soil that transformed an otherwise lifeless landscape into one of the most productive regions on Earth. To the ancient Egyptians, the Nile was not simply a river, it was the heartbeat of existence. Without it, there would have been no villages, no cities, no pharaohs, and certainly no pyramids. Around 5,000 years ago, small farming communities began to flourish along its shores. Families cultivated wheat and barley, raised cattle, and learned to predict the river's annual floods. Over generations, these scattered settlements evolved into organized kingdoms connected by trade, religion, and a shared dependence on the Nile. Life became increasingly sophisticated as craftsmen, scribes, priests, and merchants each found their place in a growing civilization. Eventually, the lands of Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north were united under a single ruler. Historians generally credit this achievement to King Narmer, sometimes identified as Mins, whose victory marked the birth of the First Dynasty and the beginning of one of history's longest-lasting civilizations. For the first time, Egypt was governed as a unified kingdom, with a powerful monarch at its head and a centralized administration capable of managing agriculture, taxation, construction, and defense. But the Egyptian king was unlike any ordinary ruler. The Egyptians believed their pharaoh was chosen by the gods or even a god in human form. He was responsible for maintaining Mat, the sacred principle of balance, justice, and cosmic order. If the pharaoh ruled wisely, the Nile would flood as expected, crops would flourish, and the kingdom would prosper. His authority reached beyond politics. It extended into religion, nature, and the very survival of the nation. This divine status shaped every aspect of Egyptian life, including how people viewed death. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not the end of existence. It was the beginning of another journey. They believed that every individual possessed a spiritual essence that continued to live after the body died. However, this eternal life depended upon preserving the physical body. If the body decayed beyond recognition, the soul could lose its home forever. Because of this belief, burial became one of the most important rituals in Egyptian society. Food, clothing, jewelry, furniture, tools, weapons, and even small statues of servants were placed inside tombs. These objects were not symbolic decorations. They were intended to serve the deceased in the next world, where life was imagined as an eternal continuation of life on Earth. Long before the pyramids appeared, Egypt's elite were buried inside rectangular mud brick structures known as mastabas. From the outside, a mastaba looked relatively simple, with sloping walls and a flat roof. Beneath the surface, however, hidden chambers protected the body and precious burial goods from robbers and the harsh desert environment. As generations passed, these tombs became larger and more elaborate. Each powerful ruler sought to leave behind a greater monument than the one before. Their tombs were no longer just places of burial, they became lasting symbols of authority, wealth, and divine legitimacy. For a pharaoh, building a magnificent tomb was never an act of vanity alone. It was a declaration that his reign had been blessed by the gods and that his name deserved to live forever. A grand monument inspired loyalty among his people, demonstrated the kingdom's immense resources, and proclaimed to future generations that this ruler possessed power unlike any other. Without realizing it, these early kings had begun an architectural race that would transform Egypt forever. The humble mastaba, built from sun-dried mud brick, would soon evolve into something far more ambitious. One brilliant idea to build upward instead of outward would change the course of architectural history and lay the foundation for the greatest stone monuments humanity has ever created. The age of the pyramids was about to begin. History rarely changes in a single moment. More often, it advances through the vision of one remarkable individual who dares to imagine something the world has never seen before. For ancient Egypt, that moment arrived during the reign of Pharaoh Djoser, around the 27th century before Christ. By this time, Egypt had grown into a stable and prosperous kingdom. Its rulers commanded vast territories, organized thousands of workers, and controlled enormous agricultural wealth. Yet, despite this growing power, the tombs of Egypt's kings still followed the same ancient tradition. Pharaohs were buried beneath large mastabas, rectangular structures built from mud brick, impressive for their time but ultimately limited in scale. Djoser wanted something different. As the ruler of the Third Dynasty, he understood that a king was more than a political leader. He was believed to be the living bridge between humanity and the gods. His death was not an ending but a sacred transformation into an eternal divine being. If his reign was to be remembered forever, then his final resting place had to surpass anything Egypt had ever witnessed. To achieve that impossible dream, Djoser turned to an extraordinary man whose name would echo through history. His name was Imhotep. Unlike most architects of the ancient world, Imhotep was far more than a builder. He was a royal advisor, a master engineer, a priest, a physician, and one of the greatest intellectuals of his age. Thousands of years later, the Egyptians would even worship him as a god of wisdom and healing. Few historical figures have ever earned such lasting admiration. Imhotep's greatest achievement began with a simple but revolutionary question. What if a mastaba did not remain flat? Instead of constructing a single rectangular tomb, he enlarged it several times, placing progressively smaller mastabas directly on top of one another. Layer by layer, the monument rose higher toward the heavens until it formed a structure unlike anything humanity had ever created, a pyramid of 6 giant steps climbing into the Egyptian sky. The Step Pyramid of Djoser was born. Standing at approximately 200 feet in height, it became the tallest structure ever built by human hands at that time. For people living nearly 5,000 years ago, the sight must have been almost unimaginable. Rising above the surrounding desert, it dominated the landscape like an artificial mountain, visible from miles away. Yet its greatest innovation was not simply its height. For the first time in history, a massive royal monument was constructed almost entirely from carefully cut limestone blocks instead of sun-dried mud brick. This marked the beginning of monumental stone architecture. The builders had to learn entirely new methods of quarrying stone, shaping enormous blocks, transporting them across the desert, and fitting them together with remarkable precision. Every challenge they overcame became a lesson that future generations of Egyptian builders would refine. The Step Pyramid was not an isolated building either. It stood at the heart of an enormous ceremonial complex surrounded by high limestone walls, temples, courtyards, shrines, and ceremonial gateways covering an area larger than many modern city blocks. The entire complex was carefully designed to serve the pharaoh's eternal existence after death. Every stone carried religious meaning. The pyramid's ascending levels symbolized the king's journey upward toward the heavens. The Egyptians believed that after death, the pharaoh would join the gods, particularly the sun god Ra, and continue protecting Egypt for eternity. Rather than trapping the king beneath the earth, the step design appeared almost like a gigantic staircase reaching into the sky, allowing his spirit to climb toward the divine realm. This idea transformed Egyptian architecture forever. The tomb was no longer simply a place to preserve a body. It became a sacred machine designed to guarantee eternal life, blending religion, engineering, astronomy, and royal power into a single breathtaking monument. The Step Pyramid proved something even more important. If Egyptians could build one mountain of stone, perhaps they could build an even greater one. That bold realization would inspire future pharaohs to dream on an even grander scale. Within only a few generations, the stepped silhouette would disappear, replaced by smooth-sided giants that would become the most famous monuments on Earth. The age of the true pyramids had begun. Every great achievement is built upon countless failures. When people gaze at the Great Pyramid of Giza today, it is easy to imagine that the ancient Egyptians knew exactly what they were doing from the very beginning. But history tells a different story. The world's most famous pyramids were not born from perfection. They were the result of decades of experimentation, costly mistakes, and one pharaoh's relentless determination to accomplish what no ruler before him had achieved. That ruler was Pharaoh Sneferu. Ascending the throne around the 26th century before Christ, Sneferu inherited a kingdom that had already witnessed the revolutionary Step Pyramid of Djoser. Yet for Sneferu, even that astonishing monument was only the beginning. He dreamed of something entirely new, a pyramid with smooth, sloping sides that would appear as a perfect geometric form rising from the desert. It was an ambitious vision unlike anything the world had ever seen. His first great experiment was the Great Pyramid. Many historians believe it was originally designed as a step pyramid before being transformed into a smooth-sided structure by filling in its terraces with additional limestone casing. On paper, the idea seemed brilliant. In reality, it exposed weaknesses that Egyptian builders had never encountered before. The outer layers were not firmly bonded to the inner core, and the foundation beneath sections of the pyramid proved unstable. At some point, either during construction or not long after it was completed, much of the outer structure collapsed. Today, the Great Pyramid stands like a lonely stone tower surrounded by enormous piles of fallen masonry, a silent reminder that even the greatest ambitions can crumble when engineering fails. For many civilizations, such a disaster might have ended the dream. For Sneferu, it became a lesson. Instead of abandoning his vision, he ordered another pyramid to be built farther north at Djoser. This structure would later become known as the Bent Pyramid. At first, construction progressed with confidence. The builders chose an unusually steep angle, hoping to create an even taller and more magnificent monument. But as the pyramid rose higher, dangerous cracks began appearing inside its chambers. The immense weight pressing downward threatened the entire structure. The engineers faced an impossible decision. Continue building at the original angle and risk complete collapse, or change the design before it was too late. They chose survival. Roughly halfway up, the slope was reduced dramatically, creating the unmistakable bend that still defines the monument today. From a distance, the pyramid appears to change direction in midair, making it one of the most unusual architectural achievements in history. Although visually unique, the bent pyramid represented something far more important than an odd shape. It proved that Egyptian engineers were learning. They observed how weight was distributed through stone, recognized the dangers of excessive angles, and adapted their designs before disaster struck. Rather than hiding their mistakes, they improved because of them. Armed with these hard-earned lessons, Sneferu launched one final project. This time, the builders selected a safer angle from the very beginning. They strengthened the internal structure, improved the foundation, and refined the methods used to place massive limestone blocks with greater precision. The result was extraordinary. The Red Pyramid. Named after the reddish color of its exposed limestone, it became the first successful true smooth-sided pyramid in human history. Elegant, symmetrical, and structurally stable, it finally achieved the vision Sneferu had pursued for decades. The Red Pyramid was more than a royal tomb. it was proof that experience could overcome failure. Across these three monuments, the Maiden Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid, and the Red Pyramid, the Egyptians transformed pyramid construction from bold experimentation into sophisticated engineering. They learned how to prepare stronger foundations, calculate safer angles, organize massive labor forces, transport enormous quantities of stone, and construct monuments capable of surviving for thousands of years. These advances marked a revolution in architecture. For the first time, builders possessed the knowledge needed to create monuments on a scale previously thought impossible. Every collapsed wall, every cracked chamber, and every redesigned slope became part of an extraordinary process of innovation. Sneferu may not have built the most famous pyramid in Egypt, but without his persistence, his willingness to learn from failure, and his determination to keep building after each setback, the Great Pyramid of Giza might never have existed. His experiments became the blueprint for perfection. And the next generation would take those lessons and create a monument that would leave the entire ancient world in awe. If the Step Pyramid marked the beginning of Egypt's architectural journey, and Sneferu's monuments represented decades of experimentation, then the Great Pyramid of Giza was the moment everything came together. It was the masterpiece that fulfilled generations of ambition. Around the 26th century before Christ, Pharaoh Khufu, known to the ancient Greeks as Cheops, ascended the throne of Egypt. Although relatively little is known about his personality, one thing is beyond question. Khufu commissioned the greatest building project the world had ever seen. His vision was unlike anything attempted before. Rather than simply constructing a larger tomb, Khufu sought perfection. Every lesson learned from his father Sneferu's experiments was carefully applied to create a monument that combined immense size, extraordinary precision, and breathtaking simplicity. The result would become the largest pyramid ever built, and the only surviving wonder of the ancient world. The Great Pyramid originally stood at approximately 481 feet tall, making it the tallest human-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Not until the construction of medieval cathedrals in Europe would any building finally surpass its height. Its scale remains astonishing even today. Each side of the pyramid measures roughly 756 feet in length, forming an almost perfect square. The four sides are aligned with remarkable accuracy to the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west. Modern surveys reveal that the builders achieved an astonishing level of precision, with only tiny deviations despite having no modern instruments or computers. Even more incredible is what lies beneath its smooth geometric form. The Great Pyramid contains more than 2 million limestone and granite blocks. Most weigh between 2 and 3 tons, while some of the enormous granite beams used inside the monument weigh more than 70 tons. Together, these stones create a structure weighing approximately 6 million tons, making it one of the heaviest buildings ever constructed. Yet the pyramid was never simply a massive pile of stone. Hidden deep within its interior is a carefully designed system of corridors, chambers, and passageways that continues to fascinate archaeologists today. Entering through a concealed opening on the northern face, visitors travel along narrow passages leading into the heart of the monument. One of its most remarkable features is the Grand Gallery. Stretching nearly 150 feet in length, this spectacular corridor rises dramatically upward through the pyramid with a high, corbelled ceiling. The walls gradually step inward as they climb, creating an elegant architectural effect unlike anything built before. Even after thousands of years, the precision of its stonework continues to amaze engineers and historians alike. At the end of this magnificent passage lies the King's Chamber. Unlike many other rooms inside the pyramid, the King's Chamber is constructed entirely from massive blocks of red granite transported from Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. At its center rests a simple granite sarcophagus believed to have held the body of Pharaoh Khufu. Above the chamber, the builders created a series of hidden relieving spaces designed to distribute the enormous weight of the pyramid. These ingenious engineering features protected the chamber from collapsing beneath millions of tons of stone overhead, demonstrating extraordinary understanding of structural design. Despite centuries of exploration, many mysteries remain. Why were some passages sealed while others remained accessible? Were there additional chambers that have yet to be discovered? Modern scanning technologies have revealed previously unknown voids inside the pyramid, reminding us that even today, the monument has not revealed all of its secrets. But perhaps the greatest mystery is not how it was built. It is why it continues to inspire such awe. The Great Pyramid represents the perfect union of mathematics, engineering, religion, political authority, and human determination. Every carefully placed stone reflects decades of planning, extraordinary organization, and the coordinated efforts of thousands of skilled workers dedicated to a single purpose. For nearly 4,000 years, it stood as the tallest structure on Earth. It survived earthquakes, invasions, sandstorms, and the passing of entire civilizations. While countless palaces, temples, and cities disappeared into history, the Great Pyramid remained. That is why ancient writers recognized it as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Not simply because of its immense size, but because it embodied humanity's extraordinary ability to transform an impossible dream into enduring stone, a monument that still challenges our imagination thousands of years after its builders vanished. For centuries, the Great Pyramid has inspired one question above all others. How? How could an ancient civilization, without steel cranes, engines, or modern machinery, move millions of enormous stones and assemble them into one of the most precise structures ever built? The answer is not magic. It is not lost alien technology. It is something perhaps even more remarkable: the extraordinary power of human ingenuity, organization, and determination. Every pyramid began far from the construction site, inside vast limestone quarries. Most of the pyramid's core blocks were cut from local quarries near Giza. Skilled stonemasons used copper chisels, wooden wedges, stone hammers, and remarkable patience to separate massive blocks from the bedrock. For the harder granite used in the king's chamber, workers traveled hundreds of miles south to the quarries of Aswan. Their enormous blocks, weighing dozens of tons, were carefully extracted before beginning an incredible journey north along the Nile. The river itself became Egypt's greatest highway. During the annual flood season, boats loaded with heavy stones sailed downstream toward Giza. Archaeological discoveries suggest that canals connected the Nile directly to construction areas, allowing materials to be delivered much closer to the building site than once believed. Water, rather than land, carried much of the pyramid's enormous weight. Once the stones reached land, another challenge began. The Egyptians had no wheels capable of carrying such immense loads across soft desert sand. Instead, they placed the blocks onto large wooden sledges. Teams of workers then pulled these sledges using thick ropes, while others poured water onto the sand ahead of them. Modern experiments have shown that damp sand becomes firmer, significantly reducing friction and making heavy loads much easier to move. It was a simple solution, but an ingenious one. Reaching the pyramid itself presented an even greater obstacle. How do you lift stones weighing several tons higher and higher as the monument grows? Most historians believe the Egyptians relied on massive earthen ramps built alongside the pyramid. These ramps may have been straight, zigzagging, or wrapped partially around the structure as construction progressed. Workers dragged stone blocks upward, while supervisors carefully coordinated thousands of laborers working together in precise rhythm. At the highest levels, builders likely combined ramps with wooden levers. These simple tools multiplied human strength, allowing workers to raise blocks step by step until each stone reached its exact position. Every movement required careful planning, teamwork, and remarkable discipline. A single mistake could delay an entire section of construction. Yet perhaps the greatest misconception about the pyramids concerns the people who built them. For generations, popular culture claimed that the pyramids were constructed by vast armies of slaves, whipped into endless labor. Modern archaeology tells a very different story. Near the Giza Plateau, archaeologists uncovered the remains of an entire workers' village. The discovery transformed our understanding of pyramid construction. Instead of prison camps, researchers found organized communities with sleeping quarters, bakeries, kitchens, workshops, storage facilities, and even medical care. The evidence revealed that many pyramid builders were skilled laborers and seasonal workers recruited from across Egypt. During the Nile's flood season, when farmland lay underwater and agricultural work temporarily stopped, thousands of farmers joined state construction projects. They received food, clothing, shelter, and medical treatment in return for their service. The workers ate surprisingly nutritious diets that included bread, onions, fish, and large quantities of beef and sheep, far better than historians once expected. Skeletal remains show healed broken bones, suggesting injured workers received treatment rather than being abandoned. Some labor teams even gave themselves proud names. Inscriptions discovered inside the Great Pyramid include titles such as the Friends of Khufu and the Drunkards of Menkaure, revealing camaraderie, humor, and pride among the workforce. These were not anonymous slaves. They were craftsmen, quarrymen, engineers, haulers, cooks, sailors, and builders contributing to a project they believed honored both their king and the gods. Constructing the Great Pyramid was one of the largest cooperative efforts in the ancient world. It demanded careful planning, efficient logistics, skilled engineering, and tens of thousands of people working together toward a single goal. Every stone represented not only physical labor but also knowledge passed from one generation to the next. The pyramids were not miracles created overnight. They were the triumph of ordinary people accomplishing something extraordinary together, a monument proving that human cooperation, guided by vision and discipline, can leave a legacy that endures for thousands of years. When most people picture the construction of the pyramids, they imagine endless lines of exhausted laborers struggling beneath the desert sun. But who were these people really? They were not faceless figures lost to history. They had names, families, professions, friendships, and dreams. Thanks to remarkable archaeological discoveries made near the Giza plateau, we can now glimpse the lives of the men and women who helped create one of humanity's greatest achievements. The workers' day began before sunrise. As the cool morning air drifted across the desert, teams gathered for their assigned tasks. Some headed to the quarries to cut limestone blocks. Others prepared sledges and ropes for transportation. Skilled craftsmen shaped stone with astonishing precision, while carpenters repaired tools, potters made storage vessels, bakers prepared bread, and cooks organized meals for thousands of workers. Building a pyramid required far more than brute strength. It demanded an entire community. Excavations have uncovered the remains of a carefully planned workers' settlement complete with streets, sleeping quarters, bakeries, breweries, kitchens, workshops, and storage buildings. This was not a temporary camp but a thriving town built to support one of the largest construction projects in history. Perhaps the greatest surprise has been the quality of the workers' diet. Animal bones discovered at the site reveal that thousands of cattle, sheep, and goats were consumed each year. The workers regularly ate bread, onions, garlic, dates, fish, and large quantities of meat, foods that provided the energy needed for demanding physical labor. Brewing facilities also produced enormous amounts of beer, which was safer to drink than untreated water and served as an essential part of the daily diet. These were valuable provisions. The Egyptian state invested heavily in feeding its workforce because healthy workers were productive workers. Every meal represented the kingdom's commitment to completing the pharaoh's monumental project. Their compensation came in many forms. Rather than receiving coins which did not yet exist in ancient Egypt, workers were paid with food, clothing, housing, and other valuable goods. Grain served as one of the primary forms of economic exchange, while skilled craftsmen and supervisors often received additional rewards reflecting their experience and responsibilities. Even more remarkable is the evidence for healthcare. Archaeologists examining workers' skeletons have discovered healed fractures, repaired broken limbs, and signs that injured laborers survived long after serious accidents. Such healing could only have occurred if they had received treatment and time to recover. Medical practitioners appear to have cared for injured workers, demonstrating that these people were considered valuable members of society, rather than disposable labor. Some workers undoubtedly lost their lives during construction. Yet those who died were often buried in carefully prepared tombs near the pyramids themselves. Although modest compared to royal burials, these graves reflected respect and dignity. To be buried so close to the pharaoh's eternal monument was considered a great honor, suggesting that their contribution was recognized by the state. Many workers did not live alone. Families accompanied permanent craftsmen who remained at Giza throughout much of the construction period. Wives prepared meals. Children grew up within the settlement, merchants supplied goods, and priests conducted religious ceremonies. In many ways, the workers' village functioned like a small city, filled with the ordinary rhythms of everyday life. The workforce itself included a remarkable variety of professions. Stonecutters extracted limestone from nearby quarries. Engineers planned construction sequences. Surveyors measured angles with extraordinary precision. Rope makers produced the heavy cords needed for transportation. Sailors navigated stone shipments along the Nile. Metalworkers crafted copper tools, while scribes carefully recorded supplies, labor assignments, and deliveries. Every occupation played a vital role in the success of the project. Archaeology continues to reveal their stories. Excavations have uncovered bakeries capable of producing thousands of loaves of bread each day, enormous breweries, communal kitchens, administrative buildings, and even graffiti left behind by the workers themselves. Some crews proudly identified themselves with names such as the Friends of Khufu, reminding us that behind every massive stone stood real people with identities, pride, and a shared purpose. The pyramids were never built by one extraordinary individual. They were built by thousands of ordinary people whose combined knowledge, discipline, and cooperation achieved something extraordinary. Farmers became laborers during the Nile flood season. Skilled artisans perfected their crafts. Families supported one another while generations worked toward a common goal. Today the pharaoh's name is remembered because of the Great Pyramid. But hidden within every carefully placed stone is the forgotten legacy of the builders themselves, men and women, whose lives prove that history's greatest wonders are often created not by legends, but by ordinary people working together with extraordinary determination. For more than 4,000 years, the pyramids have stood beneath the Egyptian sun, weathering sandstorms, earthquakes, and the passage of countless civilizations. Millions of people have walked around them. Thousands have explored their interior. Hundreds of archaeologists have spent their lives studying every stone. And yet, the Great Pyramid of Giza continues to guard some of its greatest secrets. Even today, historians cannot say with complete certainty that we have discovered everything hidden inside. The moment visitors step through the pyramid's entrance, they leave the bright desert behind and enter a maze of narrow corridors carved deep into solid stone. Some passages descend sharply toward unfinished underground chambers. Others climb upward through cramped tunnels barely large enough for a person to crawl through. Every turn raises a new question. Why was the interior designed this way? Unlike later Egyptian pyramids, the Great Pyramid contains an astonishingly complex internal layout. Hidden within its massive body are passageways, chambers, shafts, and galleries that appear far more sophisticated than those found in earlier monuments. Every corridor seems to have been placed with deliberate purpose, yet many of those purposes remain uncertain. One of the pyramid's most impressive spaces is the Grand Gallery. Its soaring ceiling rises dramatically above visitors, creating an architectural masterpiece unlike anything else from the ancient world. Some researchers believe the gallery served as a ceremonial passage leading toward the king's chamber. Others suggest it played a practical role during construction, perhaps helping workers move enormous granite blocks into position. No one knows for certain. Above the king's chamber lies another remarkable mystery. Hidden behind the visible room are 5 narrow compartments stacked one above another. These spaces were not designed for burial or ceremonies. Instead, they function as relieving chambers, distributing the tremendous weight of millions of tons of stone resting overhead. Without them, the ceiling below might have collapsed thousands of years ago. It is an extraordinary example of ancient engineering. Even after discovering these hidden spaces, researchers suspected the pyramid might contain much more. Throughout history, explorers have searched tirelessly for secret rooms. Some hoped to uncover forgotten treasures. Others believed they would find lost royal archives or hidden burial chambers untouched since the age of the pharaohs. Legends spoke of concealed passages leading to mysterious libraries, sacred relics, or even unimaginable knowledge preserved from a forgotten civilization. Most of those stories remain legends, but not all hidden spaces turned out to be myths. In the early years of the 21st century, engineers began using robotic technology to investigate places too small for humans to enter. Tiny remotely controlled machines crawled through the pyramid's narrow shafts, carrying cameras and scientific instruments into areas that had remained inaccessible for thousands of years. the world watched with anticipation. One famous robot explored the so-called southern shaft leading upward from the king's chamber. At its end stood a small limestone door fitted with two mysterious copper handles. What lay beyond it? When researchers carefully drilled through the tiny doorway and inserted a miniature camera, they discovered another sealed door. Instead of solving the mystery, the expedition only created a new one. What was hidden behind the second barrier? To this day, no definitive answer has been found. Then came an even greater technological breakthrough. Rather than drilling into the pyramid or removing stones, an international team of scientists launched an ambitious project known as Scan Pyramids. Their goal was simple but revolutionary: look inside the pyramid without damaging it. Using advanced technologies including infrared thermography, laser scanning, drones, and cosmic ray muon detectors particles that constantly rain down from space, they created detailed images of the pyramid's interior, almost like performing a giant medical scan on one of the world's oldest buildings. The results astonished the scientific community. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids team announced the discovery of an enormous hidden void located above the Grand Gallery. The mysterious space appeared to be at least 100 feet long. It was unlike any previously known chamber inside the pyramid. No entrance had been found. No artifacts had been recovered. No inscriptions explained its purpose. Researchers still debate what this enormous void actually is. Some believe it may have been designed to reduce structural pressure inside the monument. Others suggest it could represent an undiscovered corridor, a hidden chamber, or an architectural feature unlike anything previously identified in ancient Egypt. For now, nobody can say with certainty, and that uncertainty is precisely what makes the Great Pyramid so captivating. Despite centuries of exploration, modern technology, and scientific investigation, the monument refuses to surrender all of its secrets. Every new discovery seems to generate even more questions than answers. Were there additional chambers intended for rituals that have never been entered? Did ancient architects deliberately conceal certain spaces from future generations? Could other hidden voids still exist behind walls that appear completely solid? Or have we only begun to understand the extraordinary complexity of this ancient masterpiece? The Great Pyramid has survived more than 4 millennia. It has witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms, the birth of empires, and the evolution of science itself. Yet even in the age of satellites, robotics, and particle physics, it continues to challenge humanity's understanding. Perhaps that is its greatest secret of all. The pyramid is not simply a monument from the distant past. It is a living mystery, one that still whispers unanswered questions to every generation bold enough to seek the truth. When most people think of Giza, they picture only 3 enormous pyramids rising above the desert. But the pyramids were never meant to stand alone. What we see today is only part of a much larger masterpiece, a carefully planned sacred landscape where every structure, every pathway, and every monument served a purpose. The Giza Plateau was not simply a cemetery. It was a vast ceremonial complex designed to guide a pharaoh from the world of the living into eternity. The pyramid itself was only the beginning. At the eastern side of each royal pyramid stood a magnificent mortuary temple. This was where priests performed daily rituals in honor of the deceased king. Long after the pharaoh's burial, these ceremonies continued for years and sometimes even centuries. Offerings of bread, beer, meat, incense, and flowers were presented each day, as the Egyptians believed the king's spirit still required nourishment in the afterlife. The walls of these temples were once decorated with colorful reliefs showing religious ceremonies, victories, and scenes from the pharaoh's reign. Although much of their decoration has disappeared over time, the surviving foundations reveal that these temples were once places filled with life, music, chanting, and the scent of burning incense. From the mortuary temple, a long covered stone road stretched toward the edge of the Nile floodplain. This remarkable structure is known today as the causeway. More than a simple road, the causeway formed a symbolic bridge between two worlds. During the royal funeral, priests carried the pharaoh's body along this sacred path, surrounded by mourners, officials, musicians, and sacred rituals. The journey represented the king's final passage from the land of the living toward his eternal resting place. Some causeways extended for more than half a mile and were enclosed by massive limestone walls. Their interiors were often decorated with carvings depicting religious festivals, military campaigns, and scenes celebrating the divine power of the king. At the end of the causeway stood another important structure, the Valley Temple. Unlike the pyramid itself, the Valley Temple was located much closer to the Nile, where boats transporting the king's body would arrive during the funeral procession. Here, priests performed one of the most sacred ceremonies in ancient Egypt. This was the place where the pharaoh's body underwent purification and the final stages of the burial ritual before beginning its journey toward the pyramid. The temple's architecture reflected both beauty and strength. Massive limestone walls, polished granite columns, and carefully paved floors demonstrated the extraordinary craftsmanship of Egyptian builders. Even today, parts of these temples remain remarkably well preserved, allowing visitors to imagine the grandeur they once possessed. Yet perhaps the most fascinating discovery at Giza was hidden beneath the sand. In the 1950s, archaeologists uncovered a gigantic pit sealed with enormous limestone blocks. Inside lay one of the most extraordinary treasures ever discovered in Egypt. It was a full-sized wooden ship. Known as the Solar Boat, or the Sun Boat of Khufu, the vessel measured more than 140 feet in length and had been carefully dismantled into over 1,000 individual pieces before burial. After years of painstaking restoration, archaeologists reconstructed the magnificent craft almost exactly as it had been assembled more than 4,000 years earlier. Why would a ship be buried beside a pyramid? According to Egyptian belief, the sun god Ra sailed across the sky each day in a sacred boat before traveling through the underworld during the night. The pharaoh, now transformed into a divine being, would accompany Ra on this eternal voyage across the heavens. Whether the vessel was used during Khufu's funeral or built solely for his journey in the afterlife remains uncertain. Either possibility reflects the extraordinary depth of Egyptian religious belief, but no monument at Giza captures the imagination quite like the Great Sphinx. Carved directly from a single outcrop of limestone, the colossal statue stretches more than 240 feet in length and rises approximately 66 feet above the desert floor. With the powerful body of a lion and the calm face of a king, the Sphinx has silently guarded the plateau for thousands of years. Most scholars believe its face represents Pharaoh Khafre, the builder of the second pyramid of Giza, although this identification continues to be debated. To the ancient Egyptians, the lion symbolized strength, courage, and royal authority. Combining the body of the king of beasts with the face of a pharaoh created the perfect guardian for one of the world's most sacred landscapes. Even today, the Sphinx remains surrounded by mystery. Its broken nose has inspired countless legends, while erosion patterns across its body continue to fuel debates among researchers. Hidden chambers have been rumored beneath its paws, although no convincing evidence has confirmed such stories. Whether fact or legend, the Sphinx has become one of history's most enduring symbols. When viewed together, the pyramids, mortuary temples, causeways, valley temples, solar boats, cemeteries, workers' villages, and the Great Sphinx reveal something extraordinary. The Giza Plateau was never designed as a collection of separate buildings. It was conceived as a single, carefully planned sacred complex where architecture, religion, astronomy, engineering, and royal power merged into one breathtaking vision. Every structure complemented another. Every pathway served a ceremonial purpose. Every monument reinforced the pharaoh's divine journey from earthly ruler to eternal guardian of Egypt. Today, millions of visitors arrive at Giza expecting to see three famous pyramids. They leave having witnessed something far greater. Not merely a group of monuments, but an entire city of eternity, one of the most ambitious architectural achievements ever created by human civilization, standing as a timeless reminder that the ancient Egyptians did not simply build for a lifetime, they built for forever. To truly understand why the pyramids were built, we must first understand one simple truth about ancient Egypt. The pyramids were never just about death, they were about defeating it. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not the end of existence. It was a doorway, a transition, the beginning of an eternal journey that was every bit as real as life on Earth. While many civilizations feared death as an unavoidable conclusion, the Egyptians believed it was only the first step into another world, one that could last forever, if the proper rituals were followed. This belief shaped nearly every aspect of Egyptian civilization. Their temples, their art, their literature, and their greatest monuments all reflected one overwhelming desire to secure eternal life. At the center of this spiritual universe stood Ra, the mighty sun god. Every morning, the Egyptians watched the sun rise above the eastern horizon, bringing warmth, light, and life to the world. Every evening, they watched it disappear beneath the western horizon, only to return again the following dawn. To them, this was far more than a natural event. It was proof that life could triumph over death. According to Egyptian belief, Ra sailed across the sky each day aboard his magnificent solar boat. As night fell, he entered the dangerous underworld, where he battled terrifying forces of chaos before emerging victorious at sunrise. His endless cycle of death and rebirth symbolized hope, renewal, and eternal existence. The pharaoh hoped to join this divine voyage. By becoming one with Ra, the king would continue protecting Egypt forever, traveling alongside the sun across the heavens for all eternity. Yet another god played an equally important role in the Egyptian vision of the afterlife. His name was Osiris. According to one of Egypt's most famous myths, Osiris had once ruled the world wisely before being betrayed and murdered by his jealous brother Seth. His body was cut into pieces and scattered across the land. But the story did not end there. With the devotion of his wife Isis and the help of powerful magic, Osiris was restored to life. Though he no longer ruled the world of the living, he became the king of the underworld and the supreme judge of the dead. His resurrection carried a powerful message. Death could be overcome. Every Egyptian hoped to follow the same path as Osiris, passing safely into eternal life after judgment. But reaching that eternal paradise was far from guaranteed. The journey after death was believed to be long, dangerous, and filled with supernatural challenges. The deceased would travel through the mysterious underworld, encountering strange creatures, magical gates, and powerful guardians who demanded secret knowledge before allowing anyone to pass. Eventually, every soul arrived at the Hall of Judgment. There, the heart of the deceased was placed upon a great scale opposite the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth, justice, and cosmic balance. If the heart remained light and pure, the soul was declared worthy. If it was heavy with lies, cruelty, or wrongdoing, it faced a terrifying fate. A monstrous creature known as Ammit, part lion, part hippopotamus, and part crocodile waited beside the scales. Should the judgment fail, she would devour the heart, erasing the individual forever. There would be no second chance, no rebirth, no eternal life. To help navigate this perilous journey, the Egyptians created one of history's most remarkable religious texts. Today, we know it as the Book of the Dead. Rather than a single book, it was a collection of sacred spells, prayers, hymns, and magical instructions written on papyrus scrolls and placed inside tombs. These writings served as a guidebook for the soul, teaching the deceased how to answer divine questions, avoid dangerous spirits, pass through enchanted gates, and safely reach the kingdom of Osiris. Some scrolls even contain detailed illustrations showing the soul's journey through the afterlife. Every word was believed to possess genuine supernatural power. Equally important was the preservation of the body itself. The Egyptians believed that each person possessed several spiritual elements, including the Ka, the life force, and the Ba, often represented as a human-headed bird capable of traveling between worlds. For these spiritual forces to reunite and continue existing, they needed to recognize and return to the physical body. If the body decayed beyond recognition, eternal life could be lost forever. This belief gave rise to one of ancient Egypt's most famous practices, mummification. The process required extraordinary skill and could take approximately 70 days to complete. Priests carefully removed internal organs, dried the body using natural salts known as natron, wrapped it in hundreds of yards of fine linen, and placed protective amulets between the layers of cloth. Sacred prayers accompanied every stage of the ceremony, transforming the deceased into someone prepared for eternity. For ordinary Egyptians, mummification varied according to wealth. For a pharaoh, however, only the finest materials, the most elaborate rituals, and the most magnificent burial would suffice. This brings us back to the pyramids. Why did a king need such an enormous monument? Because the pyramid was never simply a tomb. It was a sacred machine built to guarantee eternal life. Its immense size proclaimed the pharaoh's divine authority. Its carefully aligned sides reflected the order of the universe. Its chambers protected the king's body, while its towering shape symbolized the rays of the rising sun, lifting the ruler toward the heavens to join Ra. Every temple, every offering, every carved inscription, and every stone served one ultimate purpose: to ensure that the pharaoh's journey beyond death would never be interrupted. The pyramid was both fortress and gateway. It protected the body from decay and robbers, while at the same time guiding the king's spirit toward immortality. To modern eyes, the pyramids appear as astonishing feats of engineering. To the ancient Egyptians, they were something even greater. They were bridges between earth and heaven. They were monuments to fate. And above all, they were humanity's boldest declaration that death did not have the final word. By the time the Great Pyramid of Khufu was completed, ancient Egypt had accomplished something no civilization had ever achieved. The impossible had become reality. A mountain of stone stood above the Giza plateau with such precision and scale that it would remain the tallest structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. For many rulers, such a monument would have marked the end of ambition. For Egypt, it was only the beginning. The Fourth Dynasty would become the greatest era of pyramid construction in human history, a golden age in which engineering, religion, architecture, and royal power reached extraordinary heights. Across the Western Desert, one magnificent monument followed another, transforming the skyline of Giza into one of the most recognizable landscapes on Earth. Khufu's successor was his son, Pharaoh Khafre. Although Khafre's pyramid is slightly smaller than his father's, many visitors mistakenly believe it is the largest. That illusion comes from its position. Built upon slightly higher ground, the pyramid appears taller when viewed from a distance. Even today, remnants of its original smooth limestone casing remain near its summit, offering a rare glimpse of how all the pyramids once looked when their polished white surfaces reflected the brilliant Egyptian sun. Imagine standing on the Giza plateau more than 4,000 years ago. Instead of weathered stone, the pyramids would have shimmered like enormous mountains of light. Their limestone casing was so finely polished that sunlight bounced from every surface, making the monuments visible from many miles away. Travelers approaching Egypt by boat along the Nile would have seen dazzling white pyramids rising above the desert, glowing beneath the morning sun and burning gold at sunset. To the ancient Egyptians, this brilliance was deeply symbolic. The smooth sides reflected the rays of the sun god Ra, reinforcing the belief that the pharaoh would ascend to the heavens after death. The pyramid itself became a physical representation of divine light, connecting earth with the eternal sky. Khafre's pyramid was only one part of a much larger vision. He expanded the ceremonial complex surrounding his monument, constructing an impressive valley temple connected to the pyramid by a long covered causeway. Massive granite blocks formed its walls, while beautifully carved statues of the king once filled its halls. These buildings played an essential role in royal funerals and the ongoing religious ceremonies that honored the pharaoh long after his death. Most scholars also believe that Khafre commissioned the Great Sphinx. With the powerful body of a lion and the serene face of a king, the colossal guardian became one of history's most enduring symbols. Positioned near the entrance to Khafre's complex, it watched silently over the sacred landscape, representing strength, wisdom, and divine authority. Together, the pyramid, temples, causeway, and sphinx created one of the most ambitious architectural compositions ever designed. The next ruler, Pharaoh Menkaure, inherited this extraordinary legacy. His pyramid would become the smallest of the three Great Pyramids at Giza, standing approximately 215 feet tall. Compared with the enormous monuments of Khufu and Khafre, it appeared modest in scale. Yet smaller did not mean less magnificent. Menkaure introduced distinctive architectural features that reflected changing artistic tastes. The lower portions of his pyramid were faced with elegant red granite transported from Aswan, while the upper sections were covered with brilliant white limestone. The contrast between the two materials must have created a striking visual effect, unlike any other pyramid on the plateau. His funerary complex also displayed exceptional craftsmanship. Beautiful statues discovered within the temples depict Menkaure standing alongside goddesses and protective deities with remarkable realism and grace. These masterpieces reveal that Egyptian sculpture reached extraordinary levels of artistic sophistication during the Fourth Dynasty. By the reign of Menkaure, pyramid construction had become an incredibly refined science. Generations of architects, surveyors, engineers, and craftsmen had perfected their skills through decades of experience. Quarrying techniques became more efficient. Transportation systems along the Nile operated with remarkable organization. Labor forces were carefully coordinated, and construction projects followed highly disciplined administrative plans. The Egyptian state itself had evolved into a machine capable of mobilizing enormous resources. Thousands of farmers joined seasonal labor crews during the annual Nile flood. Skilled stonemasons shaped limestone with astonishing precision. Scribes carefully recorded supplies, food rations, tools, and workforce assignments. Priests oversaw religious ceremonies, while administrators coordinated every stage of construction. The pyramids represented far more than architectural achievements. They demonstrated the strength of one of history's most organized governments. Beyond Giza, pyramid building spread throughout Egypt. Earlier monuments such as the Step Pyramid at Saqqara and Sneferu's pyramids at Dashur remained symbols of innovation, while later rulers continued constructing pyramids at sites including Abusir, Abu Rawash, and Saqqara. Although many of these later pyramids were smaller or less durable, they reflected the continuing importance of royal tombs within Egyptian culture. Each monument added another chapter to an architectural tradition that had transformed the ancient world. For nearly 2 centuries, pyramid construction flourished. This remarkable period became the pinnacle of Egyptian engineering, religious expression, and royal ambition. Never before had so many resources been devoted to monumental architecture on such an unprecedented scale. Yet history never stands still. As political power gradually shifted and economic pressures increased, enormous pyramids became increasingly difficult to build and maintain. Later pharaohs chose smaller monuments or adopted entirely different burial traditions. Hidden rock-cut tombs would eventually replace towering pyramids, offering greater protection against tomb robbers. The Golden Age slowly came to an end, but its legacy never faded. The pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure continue to dominate the Giza Plateau just as they did thousands of years ago. They are more than royal tombs. They are monuments to an era when imagination knew no limits, when an entire civilization united behind impossible dreams, and when human determination reshaped the desert into one of the greatest architectural landscapes ever created. The Golden Age of pyramid building lasted only a brief moment in history. Its achievements, however, became timeless. Even today, as the sun rises over Giza, and its first rays touch the ancient stone, the pyramids still remind the world that some civilizations do not merely leave behind ruins. They leave behind wonders. For nearly 2 centuries, the Egyptian pyramids grew larger, more ambitious, and more magnificent with each new generation of pharaohs. From the revolutionary Step Pyramid of Djoser to the colossal monuments of Giza, pyramid building had become the ultimate symbol of royal power and divine authority. Then, almost as suddenly as it had begun, the age of the Great Pyramids came to an end. The question is one that has puzzled historians for generations. If the Egyptians possessed the knowledge, the experience, and the skilled workforce to build these incredible monuments, why did they stop? The answer was not a single event. It was the result of economic pressure, political change, growing insecurity, and the realization that the very monuments designed to protect the pharaoh had become impossible to defend. The first challenge was simple but overwhelming. The pyramids were incredibly expensive. Constructing a royal pyramid required years of planning before a single stone was laid. Tens of thousands of workers had to be fed every day. Skilled craftsmen, engineers, surveyors, priests, sailors, and administrators all depended on the state's resources. Vast quantities of limestone, granite, copper tools, timber, food, clothing, and transport animals had to be organized with extraordinary precision. Every stage demanded enormous investment. The Great Pyramid alone required more than 2 million stone blocks, each carefully quarried, transported, and positioned with astonishing accuracy. Such projects consumed years of labor and enormous amounts of the kingdom's wealth. As long as Egypt remained prosperous, these expenses could be sustained, but prosperity does not last forever. Toward the end of the Old Kingdom, Egypt began facing increasing economic difficulties. The centralized government that had once controlled every major construction project gradually weakened. Local governors, known as nomarchs, became increasingly powerful and began acting more independently from the pharaoh. Instead of wealth flowing toward the royal court, more resources remained in regional provinces. At the same time, some historians believe the Nile experienced periods of unusually poor flooding. Since Egyptian agriculture depended entirely on the river's annual inundation, lower water levels meant smaller harvests, food shortages, and reduced tax revenues. A weaker harvest affected everything. Less grain meant fewer supplies for workers. Fewer supplies meant fewer laborers could be supported. Without enormous surpluses, projects on the scale of Giza became increasingly unrealistic. The kingdom that had once mobilized tens of thousands of people with remarkable efficiency no longer possessed the same financial strength. Political instability only made matters worse. The pharaoh's authority had once been absolute. He was regarded as a living god whose command reached every corner of Egypt. But as regional leaders accumulated wealth and influence, royal power slowly declined. Civil administration became more fragmented, making it increasingly difficult to organize construction projects that required decades of uninterrupted cooperation. Large pyramids were no longer practical. Yet another problem had become painfully obvious. The pyramids were impossible to hide. Their enormous size had originally been intended to proclaim the pharaoh's greatness for eternity. Instead, they became giant signposts announcing the location of priceless royal treasures. Despite elaborate security measures, secret passages, sealed chambers, and carefully concealed entrances, tomb robbers repeatedly found ways inside. Gold jewelry, precious stones, ceremonial weapons, furniture, statues, and countless valuable artifacts disappeared over the centuries. Even the bodies of many pharaohs were disturbed. Ironically, the greatest monuments ever built to preserve eternal life often failed to protect the very treasures they were designed to safeguard. As a result, Egyptian rulers gradually reconsidered their burial strategy. Rather than constructing monuments visible for miles across the desert, they began seeking locations that offered something even more valuable: secrecy. This change reached its fullest expression during the New Kingdom, many centuries after the Great Pyramids of Giza were completed. Instead of towering stone monuments, pharaohs chose to be buried in hidden rock-cut tombs carved deep into the cliffs of a remote desert valley near Thebes. Today, we know this place as the Valley of the Kings. Unlike the pyramids, these tombs blended naturally into the surrounding landscape. Their entrances could be concealed beneath loose rock and desert sand, making them far more difficult for robbers to locate. Although many were eventually discovered and looted, the strategy reflected a significant change in Egyptian thinking. Protection now mattered more than public display. At the same time, Egyptian architecture itself was evolving. Rather than investing nearly all available resources into gigantic royal tombs, later pharaohs directed increasing attention toward magnificent temples dedicated to the gods. Monumental complexes such as Karnak, Luxor, and Abu Simbel celebrated religious devotion, military victories, and the living power of the king rather than focusing exclusively on his burial. The center of royal ambition shifted. Stone was still shaped into breathtaking monuments. But those monuments now served different purposes. The disappearance of pyramid construction was not the result of lost knowledge. Egyptian architects never forgot how to cut stone, organize workers, or design massive buildings. They simply faced a world that had changed. Economic realities demanded greater efficiency. Political authority became less centralized, religious traditions evolved, security concerns grew impossible to ignore. In many ways, the pyramids had become victims of their own success. Their unmatched scale inspired admiration across the ancient world, but it also attracted thieves, consumed enormous resources, and required a level of national unity that later rulers could no longer guarantee. And yet, the end of pyramid building did not mark the end of Egypt's greatness. It marked the beginning of a new chapter. The temples, hidden tombs, colossal statues, and artistic masterpieces that followed would continue to shape one of history's most remarkable civilizations. Still, nothing would ever equal the age when entire mountains of stone rose from the desert. The era of the Great Pyramids had passed. But their legacy would prove far more enduring than the empire that created them. Long after the last pharaoh was buried, Long after the temples fell silent, and long after the kingdom itself disappeared into history, the pyramids remained unchanged, unshaken, and unmistakable. They no longer served as gateways to eternity for Egypt's kings. Instead, they became eternal symbols of human ambition itself. Today, the pyramids dominate postcards, documentaries, and travel magazines. Millions of people visit Giza every year, and the monuments seem impossible to miss. But there was a time when much of this extraordinary landscape was slowly disappearing beneath the desert itself. For centuries after the decline of ancient Egypt, the Great Pyramids stood in silence. The priests who had once maintained the temples vanished. The royal ceremonies came to an end. The offerings stopped. The sacred causeways fell into ruin, and the bustling workers' villages were gradually abandoned. Nature quietly reclaimed what humanity had built. Year after year, the desert winds carried fine grains of sand across the Giza plateau. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, entrances became buried. Courtyards disappeared beneath drifting dunes. Temples that had once echoed with prayers were swallowed by layers of sand and rubble. The pyramids themselves remained too enormous to vanish completely, but much of the magnificent complex surrounding them slowly faded from sight. By the time later civilizations arrived, many visitors saw only fragments of what had once been one of the greatest architectural achievements in history. Yet the pyramids were never entirely forgotten. One of the earliest civilizations to leave written descriptions of Egypt was ancient Greece. Beginning around the 6th century before Christ and continuing for centuries afterward, Greek merchants, scholars, soldiers, and travelers journeyed along the Nile. To them, the pyramids were already unimaginably ancient. They stood before monuments that were more than 2,000 years old, already older than the Parthenon, older than classical Athens, and older than many of the myths that shaped Greek culture. Among the most famous of these visitors was the historian Herodotus. Often called the father of history, Herodotus traveled through Egypt during the 5th century before Christ, recording stories about its monuments, customs, and rulers. His descriptions of the pyramids fascinated readers throughout the ancient world. Although some of the stories he recorded were based on local traditions rather than verified facts, his writings helped preserve knowledge of the pyramids long after the civilization that built them had disappeared. He described enormous workforces, massive construction projects, and the astonishing scale of Khufu's monument. Modern archaeology has corrected many of his conclusions, yet without writers like Herodotus, much of Europe's knowledge about ancient Egypt might have been lost altogether. Several centuries later, Egypt became part of another great empire. The Romans arrived. After Egypt was incorporated into the Roman Empire, countless officials, merchants, engineers, and tourists visited Giza. Wealthy Romans regarded Egypt as a land of mystery and ancient wisdom. Traveling to the pyramids became a remarkable experience, much like visiting famous historical landmarks today. Roman visitors carved graffiti onto some of the ancient stones, leaving behind their own names as evidence of their journeys. To them, the pyramids were already relics from an unimaginably distant past. Even Roman engineers, celebrated for constructing roads, aqueducts, bridges, and amphitheaters across Europe, admired the extraordinary precision of the Egyptian monuments. Despite their own remarkable achievements, they recognized that the pyramids represented something unique. As centuries passed, however, the Western Roman Empire collapsed, trade declined, and political instability spread across much of the Mediterranean world. Egypt entered a new chapter under successive Byzantine and Islamic rulers. During the Middle Ages, the pyramids continued to inspire curiosity, speculation, and legend. Many medieval travelers had little understanding of who built them or why they existed. Without the ability to read hieroglyphs, which had long since become a forgotten script, people could only guess at the monument's original purpose. Some believed the pyramids were gigantic granaries built by the biblical figure Joseph to store grain during years of famine. Others imagined they contained unimaginable treasures hidden by ancient kings. Still others believed they were repositories of magical knowledge, sacred wisdom, or mysterious scientific secrets left behind by a vanished civilization. These stories spread across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Some medieval scholars attempted to measure the pyramids or describe their architecture, while adventurous explorers searched for hidden chambers and buried treasure. Many entered the monuments through passages opened centuries earlier by treasure hunters or rulers hoping to uncover royal riches. Almost everyone expected to find unimaginable wealth. Almost everyone left disappointed. The royal tombs had been robbed long before. Their treasures had vanished thousands of years earlier. Yet the absence of gold only deepened the mystery. Why would anyone invest decades of labor into building monuments so enormous if their greatest treasures were no longer inside? Without inscriptions that could be understood, the pyramids became blank pages onto which every generation projected its own imagination. Some saw evidence of biblical history, others saw forgotten science, others saw supernatural power. Meanwhile, the desert continued its slow work. Entire temples remained hidden beneath layers of sand. Sections of the Great Sphinx were buried so deeply that, during certain periods, only its massive head remained visible above the dunes. Travelers often described the mysterious face emerging from the sand, as though the monument itself were slowly awakening from an endless sleep. Few realized that an entire body lay hidden beneath them. For nearly 2,000 years, much of Giza existed in this strange state, never entirely forgotten, yet never fully understood. The monuments stood in plain sight, but the civilization that created them had become a mystery. The language of the pharaohs had been lost. The names of many kings had faded from memory. The meaning behind the temples, rituals, and inscriptions had disappeared beneath the weight of time. The pyramids had survived, but their story had not. That story would remain buried for centuries longer, waiting for a new generation of explorers, archaeologists, and scholars to uncover the forgotten world of ancient Egypt. The stones had never forgotten the truth. Humanity simply needed to learn how to read them once again. For centuries, the pyramids stood before the world as silent giants. Travelers admired them. Merchants described them. Legends surrounded them. But almost no one truly understood them. The ancient Egyptian language had been forgotten for well over 1,000 years. Hieroglyphs covered temples, tombs, and monuments from floor to ceiling, yet they had become nothing more than mysterious symbols. To most people, they looked like decorative pictures rather than a sophisticated writing system. The pyramids had survived. Their voices had not. Everything began to change at the end of the 18th century, when one ambitious military leader set his sights on Egypt. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. In the summer of 1798, Napoleon launched a military expedition to Egypt. Officially, his objective was to weaken British influence by disrupting trade routes to India. But Napoleon's ambitions stretched far beyond warfare. He admired the civilizations of antiquity and believed that understanding Egypt could enhance both France's prestige and humanity's knowledge of history. Unlike many military campaigns of the time, Napoleon's expedition included far more than soldiers. He brought an extraordinary group of scholars. More than 160 scientists, engineers, architects, mathematicians, artists, botanists, geologists, linguists, astronomers, and historians accompanied the French army. Collectively, they became known as the savants, brilliant minds chosen not to conquer Egypt with weapons, but to study it with curiosity. It was an unprecedented decision. Never before had a military expedition carried such a large scientific team dedicated to documenting an ancient civilization. As French forces traveled across Egypt, these scholars measured monuments with remarkable precision. They sketched temples, copied inscriptions, examined statues, mapped ruins, studied wildlife, recorded local customs, and documented everything they encountered. The pyramids were among their greatest fascinations. For the first time, researchers approached these monuments using systematic observation rather than myth or speculation. Instead of asking whether giants or supernatural beings had built them, they measured angles, calculated dimensions, analyzed construction methods, and compared architectural details. Science was beginning to replace legend. Although Napoleon's military campaign ultimately ended in defeat, the scientific mission achieved something far more lasting. The enormous collection of drawings, measurements, and observations gathered during the expedition became one of the greatest scholarly works ever produced. It was published under the title Description de l'Egypte. Spanning numerous beautifully illustrated volumes, this extraordinary publication introduced Europe to ancient Egypt in unprecedented detail. Readers could examine detailed engravings of temples, pyramids, statues, landscapes, inscriptions, and artifacts unlike anything previously available. The books revealed Egypt not as a mysterious land of legends, but as a sophisticated civilization worthy of serious academic study. Artists marveled at the elegance of Egyptian architecture. Engineers admired its astonishing precision. Historians realized that many assumptions about the ancient world needed to be reconsidered. Interest in Egypt spread rapidly across Europe. Museums began collecting Egyptian artifacts. Architects borrowed Egyptian motifs for public buildings. Writers filled their stories with pharaohs, temples, and hidden tombs. A fascination with ancient Egypt swept across the continent. Yet the greatest discovery of Napoleon's expedition happened almost entirely by accident. In 1799, while French soldiers were strengthening a fort near the town of Rosetta, one officer noticed an unusual stone built into an old wall. The slab appeared ordinary at first glance, but upon closer inspection, scholars realized something extraordinary. Its surface contained the same message written in 3 different scripts. At the top were traditional Egyptian hieroglyphs. Below them appeared Demotic, a later form of Egyptian writing. At the bottom was ancient Greek, a language that scholars could still read. The artifact became known as the Rosetta Stone. Although the French eventually lost possession of the stone after their military defeat, its importance had already been recognized. For decades, Europe's greatest linguists studied copies of the inscriptions, hoping to unlock the forgotten language of the pharaohs. The challenge proved extraordinarily difficult. Many believed hieroglyphs were simply symbolic images representing ideas rather than sounds. That assumption prevented meaningful progress. Everything changed in the early 19th century. A brilliant French scholar named Jean-François Champollion dedicated years of his life to solving the mystery. Fluent in numerous ancient languages, he became convinced that hieroglyphs combined symbolic meanings with phonetic sounds. Using careful comparisons between the Greek and Egyptian texts on the Rosetta Stone, Champollion gradually identified royal names enclosed within oval shapes known as cartouches. Piece by piece, the ancient language began to reveal itself. In 1822, Champollion announced one of history's greatest linguistic breakthroughs. He had deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs. For the first time in nearly 1,500 years, humanity could once again read the words carved onto temple walls, royal tombs, statues, and pyramids. The ancient Egyptians had found their voices again. Suddenly, monuments that had stood silent for centuries began telling their own stories. The names of forgotten pharaohs emerged from inscriptions. Religious ceremonies could be understood. Royal decrees became readable. Historical events once buried beneath mystery came back to life through the words of the people who had actually lived them. This achievement marked the true birth of Egyptology. What had once been a world dominated by myths, legends, and speculation transformed into a rigorous field of scientific study. Archaeologists, linguists, historians, architects, and conservators from around the world began working together to uncover Egypt's extraordinary past. Excavations became more systematic. Artifacts were carefully recorded rather than simply collected. Ancient texts were translated instead of ignored. Questions that had puzzled travelers for centuries finally began receiving evidence-based answers. Yet every answer uncovered another mystery. The more scholars learned about the pyramids, the more astonishing they became. Their engineering proved even more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. Their religious symbolism was deeper than expected. Their builders were far more organized than legend had ever suggested. Napoleon never succeeded in establishing a lasting French empire in Egypt. His military campaign ended, but the intellectual revolution it inspired never did. By bringing scholars into the desert, documenting its monuments with unprecedented precision, and indirectly leading to the discovery and eventual decipherment of the Rosetta Stone, the expedition changed humanity's understanding of one of the world's oldest civilizations forever. The pyramids had waited patiently for thousands of years. At last, the world had begun to listen. And this remarkable rediscovery would soon inspire a new generation of explorers, men and women determined not only to admire Egypt's monuments from afar, but to step inside them, uncover their hidden treasures, and reveal the secrets that had remained buried beneath the sands for millennia. For generations, the pyramids were surrounded by speculation. Some believed they had been built by giants. Others claimed they were the work of a lost civilization possessing mysterious technologies. More imaginative theories suggested that supernatural beings or even visitors from another world had designed these astonishing monuments. The problem was simple. Very little evidence had been carefully studied. Early explorers were often more interested in treasure than knowledge. They blasted open passages with gunpowder, removed artifacts without recording where they had been found, and made conclusions based on assumptions rather than careful investigation. Valuable information disappeared forever, not because it was hidden, but because it was destroyed before anyone realized its importance. During the 19th century, however, a new generation of researchers began transforming the study of ancient Egypt. Instead of searching for gold, they searched for evidence. One of the earliest figures to leave a lasting mark was the British explorer Richard William Howard Vyse. In the 1830s, Howard Vyse carried out extensive investigations inside the Great Pyramid. His methods were sometimes controversial by modern standards, and he occasionally used explosives to force his way through blocked passages. Yet his expeditions also led to discoveries that profoundly influenced our understanding of the monument. Perhaps his most significant achievement came when he uncovered a series of hidden relieving chambers above the king's chamber. These narrow spaces had remained sealed since the pyramid was built. Inside, workers had left red-painted quarry marks and construction inscriptions that were never intended for public view. Among them appeared the name of Pharaoh Khufu written inside royal cartouches. These markings became some of the strongest pieces of evidence confirming that the Great Pyramid had indeed been built during Khufu's reign. For centuries, people had debated the monument's origins. The builders themselves had quietly left the answer hidden above the ceiling. Howard Vyse's discoveries demonstrated something important. Sometimes the greatest historical treasures are not made of gold. They are written in paint. Only a few decades later, another remarkable scholar would revolutionize archaeology even further. His name was Sir William Matthew Flinders Petrie. Today, Petrie is often regarded as the father of scientific Egyptology. Unlike many earlier explorers, Petrie believed that every detail mattered. A broken pottery fragment, a discarded tool, or the exact location of a stone block could reveal just as much about history as a spectacular statue or royal jewel. His philosophy transformed archaeology from treasure hunting into science. Working at Giza during the 1880s, Petrie carried out astonishingly precise measurements of the pyramids. Using careful surveying techniques, he documented dimensions, angles, orientations, and construction details with an accuracy that impressed engineers as much as historians. His work demonstrated that the builders had achieved levels of precision previously considered impossible for an ancient civilization. The sides of the Great Pyramid were aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions. The foundation remained remarkably level despite covering more than 13 acres. Individual stone blocks fit together with extraordinary care. These measurements challenged long-held assumptions. The pyramids were not crude monuments built through brute force alone. They were masterpieces of planning, mathematics, and engineering. As archaeological methods improved throughout the 20th century, discoveries accelerated. Researchers uncovered workers' villages, bakeries, breweries, cemeteries, workshops, and administrative buildings near Giza. These findings completely transformed the popular image of pyramid construction. The evidence showed organized communities rather than slave camps. It revealed skilled craftsmen rather than anonymous laborers. It documented careful planning instead of chaos. New technologies also opened doors that earlier generations could never have imagined. Aerial photography allowed archaeologists to identify buried structures invisible from the ground. Precise mapping equipment created detailed plans of entire archaeological sites. Ground-penetrating radar, laser scanning, digital modeling, and high-resolution photography revealed architectural features without disturbing fragile monuments. Most recently, particle physics has joined archaeology. Using naturally occurring cosmic ray muons, scientists can effectively look inside massive stone structures without removing a single block. These techniques have already revealed enormous hidden voids within the Great Pyramid, proving that even today the monument still contains undiscovered mysteries. Perhaps the greatest lesson archaeology has taught us is one of humility. Many ideas once accepted as fact have turned out to be wrong. The pyramids were not built by enslaved armies driven by whips. They were not constructed in isolation by a handful of laborers. They were not assembled through supernatural intervention. Instead, decades of evidence point toward an organized society of skilled workers, experienced engineers, talented craftsmen, careful administrators, and visionary architects working together under extraordinary leadership. Each new discovery has replaced myth with understanding. Yet archaeology has not removed all mystery from the pyramids. If anything, it has made them even more fascinating. The better we understand how they were built, the more we appreciate the astonishing achievements of the people who created them. Every excavation, every measurement, and every newly translated inscription reminds us that the ancient Egyptians were not mysterious because they possessed magical powers. They were extraordinary because they accomplished the seemingly impossible using knowledge, discipline, and determination. And with every season of excavation, the sands of Egypt continue to reveal another piece of their remarkable story. Few monuments in human history have inspired more myths than the pyramids of Egypt. Their immense size, astonishing precision, and incredible age have led generations of people to ask a simple question: could ordinary humans really have built them? For many, the answer seemed impossible. When knowledge is incomplete, imagination often fills the gaps. Over the past 2 centuries, countless theories have emerged to explain the pyramids. Some claim they were built by extraterrestrials. Others point to the legendary lost continent of Atlantis. Some believe they were created by an advanced civilization that disappeared before recorded history, while others insist the pyramids contain mysterious energy unlike anything understood by modern science. These ideas have become the subjects of best-selling books, television programs, documentaries, and internet debates. But how much of it is supported by evidence? And what has modern science actually discovered? Perhaps the most famous theory is the idea that aliens built the pyramids. According to this claim, the ancient Egyptians lacked the technology needed to quarry, transport, and position millions of massive stone blocks with such remarkable precision. Supporters argue that extraterrestrial visitors shared advanced engineering knowledge with humanity, leaving behind the pyramids as evidence of their presence. At first glance, the theory may sound intriguing. The Great Pyramid is undeniably extraordinary. It contains more than 2 million stone blocks, its sides are aligned with remarkable accuracy to the cardinal directions, and its construction continues to impress engineers even today. However, extraordinary does not automatically mean impossible. Over the past century, archaeologists have uncovered overwhelming evidence explaining how the pyramids were actually built. Ancient quarries have been discovered beside Giza. Copper tools, stone hammers, wooden sledges, rope fragments, workers' villages, bakeries, administrative records, and graffiti left by construction crews have all been found. These discoveries tell a consistent story. The pyramids were built by skilled Egyptian workers using techniques that evolved over generations. Every major stage of construction is supported by physical evidence left behind by the builders themselves. No archaeological discovery has ever produced a single artifact connected to extraterrestrial technology. No advanced machinery. No mysterious alloys. No evidence of visitors from another world. The alien theory survives because it asks fascinating questions, not because it provides convincing answers. Another enduring legend involves Atlantis. The story originates with the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who described a powerful island civilization that supposedly disappeared beneath the sea after a catastrophic disaster. Some writers have suggested that survivors of Atlantis escaped to Egypt and shared advanced scientific knowledge with the ancient Egyptians. According to this theory, the pyramids represent the last surviving achievements of this forgotten civilization. It is an appealing story. But there is one major problem. No credible archaeological evidence has ever demonstrated that Atlantis actually existed. More importantly, excavations across Egypt reveal a clear and continuous development of pyramid construction. Archaeologists can trace the progression from simple mastaba tombs to the Step Pyramid of Djoser, then through Sneferu's experimental pyramids, and finally to the perfected monuments at Giza. There is no sudden appearance of mysterious technology. Instead, there is a long history of gradual innovation. Every generation learned from the successes and failures of the one before it. Closely related to the Atlantis theory is the idea of a lost advanced civilization. Some suggest that thousands of years before ancient Egypt, an unknown global civilization possessed remarkable engineering abilities before disappearing in a natural catastrophe. According to this theory, the Egyptians merely inherited knowledge left behind by these forgotten ancestors. Again, archaeology tells a different story. Excavations reveal thousands of years of continuous cultural development along the Nile. Farming villages gradually became towns. Towns evolved into kingdoms. Writing systems developed. Monumental architecture became increasingly sophisticated over centuries. The evidence points towards steady human progress rather than the sudden inheritance of impossible knowledge. Perhaps the most mysterious claims involve hidden pyramid energy. Some believe the pyramids generate powerful electromagnetic fields capable of preserving food, sharpening metal blades, healing illness, increasing spiritual awareness, or concentrating unknown cosmic energy. These ideas became especially popular during the 20th century. Books claim that miniature pyramid models could preserve fruit, improve meditation, and even affect biological processes. Scientists have repeatedly tested such claims. To date, no reliable experiment has demonstrated that pyramids produce mysterious energy beyond normal physical phenomena. While the shape of the pyramid is structurally efficient and remarkably stable, there is no verified scientific evidence that it creates supernatural forces or unknown forms of energy. This does not make the pyramids any less extraordinary. Their true achievements are already astonishing enough. Modern archaeology, engineering, geology, and physics have shown that the ancient Egyptians possessed remarkable mathematical understanding, exceptional organizational skills, and generations of accumulated construction experience. Their accomplishments required neither magic nor advanced lost technology. They required vision. They required patience. They required one of the most organized societies the ancient world had ever known. Ironically, scientific discoveries have made the pyramids even more impressive than many conspiracy theories. The workers' villages prove they were built by highly organized labor teams rather than enslaved masses. Ancient quarry marks reveal the names of construction crews. Modern laser surveys demonstrate extraordinary precision achieved with surprisingly simple tools. Advanced scanning technologies continue to uncover hidden spaces inside the Great Pyramid, not because they reveal alien chambers, but because they show how much there is still to learn about human engineering. The greatest mystery of the pyramids is not whether aliens built them. It is how human beings, working together more than 4,000 years ago, achieved something so extraordinary that even today inspires disbelief. Perhaps that is why conspiracy theories continue to survive. Sometimes the real story feels almost too incredible to accept. Yet history often proves that the greatest achievements belong not to mythical civilizations or visitors from distant stars, but to ordinary people whose intelligence, determination, and cooperation exceeded every expectation. The pyramids do not diminish when myths are removed. They become even greater, because the most astonishing truth of all is that humanity did this on its own. Stand before the Great Pyramid for just a few moments, and one thought becomes almost impossible to ignore. How could people living more than 4,000 years ago build something so remarkably precise? Even after centuries of study, engineers continue to admire the extraordinary accuracy of the Great Pyramid. Its immense size alone is impressive, but its true brilliance lies in the countless details hidden beneath its massive stone blocks. The pyramid is not merely large, it is astonishingly exact. Each of its 4 sides was originally built almost the same length, with differences measured in only a few inches despite each side stretching more than 750 feet across. The foundation beneath the monument remains nearly perfectly level over an area of more than 13 acres. Even with modern surveying equipment, achieving such precision would require careful planning and skilled execution. The ancient Egyptians accomplished it using simple tools, patient observation, and generations of accumulated knowledge. Perhaps even more remarkable is the pyramid's orientation. The 4 sides point almost perfectly toward true north, south, east, and west. the margin of error is astonishingly small. For centuries, scholars have wondered how Egyptian surveyors achieved such accuracy without magnetic compasses, satellite navigation, or modern instruments. Most researchers believe the answer lies in astronomy. The night sky served as one of humanity's earliest maps. Long before written history, people observed the predictable movements of the stars. The Egyptians became especially skilled at using these celestial patterns to measure time, organize agriculture, and align sacred buildings. One leading theory suggests that royal surveyors carefully observed pairs of circumpolar stars that never disappeared below the northern horizon. By watching the moment when these stars aligned vertically, they could determine true north with remarkable precision. Another possibility involves careful observations of shadows cast by the sun during different times of the year. Whichever method they used, the result remains extraordinary. The pyramid was not placed randomly upon the landscape. It was positioned with deliberate mathematical and astronomical accuracy. This relationship between architecture and the heavens appears throughout ancient Egypt. Many temples align with the rising sun during important religious festivals. Others correspond to specific celestial events or seasonal changes along the Nile. To the Egyptians, the sky was not separate from the earth. It was part of the divine order. Building in harmony with the cosmos reinforced the belief that the pharaoh ruled according to universal balance established by the gods. Mathematics also played an essential role. Although the Egyptians did not possess modern algebra or calculus, they developed sophisticated practical mathematics capable of solving remarkably complex engineering problems. Surveyors measured land after the Nile's annual floods. Architects calculated slopes, angles, and proportions. Builders organized millions of stone blocks into a structure whose geometry continues to impress experts today. Every stage required careful calculation. The enormous weight of the pyramid had to be distributed safely across its foundation. Internal chambers needed to remain stable beneath millions of tons of stone. Passageways had to intersect at precise locations. Even small errors could have produced catastrophic structural failures. Instead, the monument has remained standing for more than 4 millennia. No engineer could ask for stronger proof of success. One topic that continues to generate discussion is the so-called golden ratio. Some researchers have argued that the proportions of the Great Pyramid intentionally reflect this famous mathematical relationship, often represented by the Greek letter phi. Because the golden ratio appears frequently in nature and later architecture, supporters believe the pyramid demonstrates an advanced understanding of sophisticated geometry. The idea is certainly fascinating. However, most historians remain cautious. Although certain measurements of the pyramid can be interpreted as approximating the golden ratio, there is no direct evidence that Egyptian architects consciously designed the monument around this concept. Ancient texts describing such an intention have never been discovered. The apparent relationship may simply result from the practical geometric proportions chosen by the builders. This illustrates an important principle in archaeology. Remarkable discoveries should be supported by equally remarkable evidence. Where evidence is uncertain, responsible scholarship acknowledges uncertainty rather than presenting speculation as fact. Even without the golden ratio, the pyramid's engineering achievements remain extraordinary. Its builders mastered surveying, logistics, structural design, and large-scale project management at a level unmatched by most civilizations of their time. They accomplished this without iron tools, mechanical cranes, or powered machinery. Instead, they relied on observation. They relied on mathematics. They relied on experience passed from one generation of craftsmen to the next. Their technology was ancient. Their thinking was anything but primitive. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson the pyramids teach us. Technology should never be measured only by machines. True engineering is the ability to understand nature, solve difficult problems, and transform ideas into reality using the resources available. By that standard, the architects of ancient Egypt rank among the greatest engineers in human history. Their tools may seem simple by modern standards, but the knowledge guiding those tools was profound. Stone by stone, measurement by measurement, they created a monument so accurate that thousands of years later, lasers, satellites, and digital scanners continue to confirm what the desert has always known. The Great Pyramid was not a miracle beyond human understanding. It was the triumph of human intelligence itself, and that may be the most timeless engineering achievement ever carved into stone. More than 4,000 years have passed since the first stones of the Great Pyramid were placed upon the Giza plateau. Empires have risen and fallen. Religions have spread across continents. Entire civilizations have disappeared into history, yet the pyramids remain. Today, they are no longer the royal tombs of ancient pharaohs. Instead, they have become one of humanity's greatest shared treasures, a symbol of human achievement recognized across every culture and every generation. Their purpose has changed, their importance has only grown. In 1979, the Memphis and its necropolis, including the pyramids of Giza, Saqqara, and Djoser, were officially designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This recognition confirmed what millions of people had already believed. The pyramids were not simply monuments belonging to Egypt. They belonged to the entire world. UNESCO recognized the pyramids as masterpieces of human creativity, engineering, and cultural heritage. Their preservation became an international responsibility, encouraging cooperation between Egypt and experts from around the globe. But protecting monuments that have survived for more than 4 millennia is no simple task. Every year, millions of visitors travel to Egypt with one dream in mind: to stand before the Great Pyramid. For many, it is the journey of a lifetime. Tourists arrive from every continent, walking the same desert landscape once crossed by pharaohs, priests, merchants, and ancient travelers. They photograph the towering monuments at sunrise, ride camels across the plateau, explore the narrow corridors inside the pyramids, and stand face to face with the timeless gaze of the Great Sphinx. Tourism has become one of Egypt's most important industries. It supports countless jobs, from tour guides and archaeologists to hotel workers, drivers, conservation specialists, and local businesses. Pyramids generate not only historical interest, but also economic opportunity for millions of people. Yet popularity comes with a price. Every footstep inside the Great Pyramid introduces tiny amounts of moisture and carbon dioxide from human breath. Over time, these seemingly insignificant changes can slowly affect the delicate interior environment. Outside, constant human traffic gradually wears away ancient stone surfaces. Even careful visitors leave an impact. Modern pollution presents another growing challenge. Greater Cairo, one of the largest metropolitan areas in the world, now stretches close to the Giza Plateau. Air pollution, vehicle emissions, industrial activity, and fine dust particles gradually affect the limestone surfaces of the monuments. Combined with natural weathering, these environmental pressures accelerate the slow erosion that has already been taking place for thousands of years. Climate change may also introduce new risks. Although Egypt remains largely dry, changing weather patterns, stronger seasonal storms, and occasional heavy rainfall have raised concerns among conservation experts. Limestone, while incredibly durable, is still vulnerable to water infiltration, temperature fluctuations, and chemical weathering over long periods. Human activity creates additional dangers. Urban expansion continues to push development closer to archaeological sites. Vibrations from traffic, uncontrolled tourism, illegal excavation, and even simple neglect can threaten fragile structures surrounding the pyramids, many of which receive far less attention than the famous monuments themselves. Protecting Giza requires constant vigilance. Fortunately, preservation methods have advanced dramatically over the past few decades. Conservation teams now monitor cracks within stone blocks, study structural movement, control visitor access, and carefully restore damaged areas using techniques designed to preserve as much original material as possible. Unlike earlier restorations, modern conservation follows a simple principle: intervene as little as possible. The goal is not to make the pyramids look new. The goal is to ensure they survive for future generations. Technology has become one of archaeology's greatest allies. Instead of relying solely on excavation, researchers can now study the pyramids using methods that would have seemed impossible only a generation ago. Three-dimensional laser scans highly detailed digital models, accurate to within a fraction of an inch. These models allow researchers to monitor tiny structural changes over time and preserve a permanent digital record of every visible surface. High-resolution photogrammetry combines thousands of photographs into precise virtual reconstructions that can be studied without physically touching the monuments. Ground-penetrating radar helps identify buried structures beneath the desert without disturbing archaeological remains. Perhaps the most extraordinary innovation has been the use of cosmic ray muon scanning. Invisible particles from outer space constantly pass through the Earth and through the pyramids themselves. By measuring how these particles travel through stone, scientists can identify hidden spaces inside massive structures without removing a single block. This revolutionary technology led to the discovery of the enormous hidden void above the Grand Gallery, reminding the world that even after centuries of exploration, the Great Pyramid still holds secrets waiting to be understood. Drones, artificial intelligence, satellite imaging, and digital mapping are now helping researchers document every corner of the Giza plateau with unprecedented precision. The future of archaeology is becoming increasingly non-invasive. Rather than digging deeper, scientists are learning to see farther. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the pyramids today is that history is never truly finished. Every year brings new discoveries. Every technological breakthrough reveals details that previous generations could never have imagined. Every unanswered question inspires another expedition into the ancient past. The pyramids have witnessed the rise of kingdoms, the birth of religions, the expansion of empires, and the arrival of the modern world. Now they face a different challenge, not surviving time, but surviving humanity itself. Their future depends not only on archaeologists or governments, but on every visitor who walks among the stones, every scientist who studies them, and every generation that chooses to protect rather than exploit one of the greatest achievements in human history. For more than 4,000 years, the pyramids have endured. With wisdom, care, and the power of modern science, they may continue to stand beneath the Egyptian sky for another 4,000 years and perhaps even longer. After more than 2 centuries of scientific exploration, countless archaeological expeditions, and some of the most advanced technology ever applied to an ancient monument, one surprising truth remains. The Great Pyramid still refuses to reveal all of its secrets. That may be the most extraordinary fact of all. We live in an age of satellites, artificial intelligence, 3-dimensional laser mapping, and particle physics. Humanity has walked on the moon, explored Mars with robotic spacecraft, and photographed distant galaxies billions of light years away. Yet inside a monument built more than 4,000 years ago, there are still places that no human being has ever entered. There are still questions that no one can answer with certainty. Among the greatest mysteries are the unopened spaces hidden deep within the pyramid. Over the years, explorers have discovered narrow shafts, sealed passageways, and inaccessible cavities that appear to lead toward unknown destinations. Some are so small that no person can fit inside them. Others remain completely isolated behind solid walls of limestone and granite. What lies beyond them? No one knows. One of the most famous examples is the narrow southern shaft extending from the king's chamber. At its end stands a carefully crafted limestone door fitted with 2 small copper handles. When robotic explorers first reached this mysterious barrier, excitement spread across the world. Many believed they were about to uncover a hidden burial chamber or a forgotten royal treasure. Instead, after carefully drilling through the first door and inserting a tiny camera, researchers discovered another sealed stone barrier waiting behind it, a second door. Another mystery. More questions than answers. To this day, no one can say with confidence why these doors were built, what purpose the shafts served, or what may lie beyond the remaining barriers. Then came one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 21st century. Using cosmic ray muon scanning, scientists identified an enormous hidden void located above the Grand Gallery. The chamber, or perhaps corridor, is estimated to stretch for more than 100 feet. It is one of the largest unexplored spaces ever discovered inside the Great Pyramid. Yet no entrance has been found. No artifacts have been recovered. No inscriptions explain why it exists. Researchers continue to debate its purpose. Could it be an architectural feature designed to reduce pressure within the monument? Could it conceal another passage leading deeper into the pyramid? Might it contain construction spaces left behind by ancient builders? Or could it represent something entirely unexpected? At present, every possibility remains open. The unanswered questions extend far beyond hidden chambers. How were the massive granite beams positioned above the king's chamber with such remarkable precision? Exactly how were millions of stone blocks transported and aligned without modern machinery? Which surveying techniques produced the pyramid's astonishing orientation toward true north? How did Egyptian architects coordinate thousands of workers over decades while maintaining such extraordinary accuracy? Archaeologists have developed convincing explanations for many of these challenges. Yet some details remain uncertain. History is often like assembling a gigantic puzzle with thousands of missing pieces. Every excavation uncovers another fragment. Every discovery completes part of the picture, but the full image remains incomplete. Perhaps the most important question is not what remains hidden inside the pyramid. Perhaps it is whether we have truly understood the minds of the people who built it. Modern society often judges ancient civilizations by comparing them with today's technology. We ask what machines they possessed, what metals they used, what tools they lacked. But perhaps we should ask different questions. How did they organize knowledge across generations? How did they educate skilled craftsmen? How did they inspire tens of thousands of people to dedicate years of their lives to a single monumental vision? Those answers may ultimately prove more valuable than any hidden chamber. The future of pyramid research has never been more exciting. New generations of scientists are developing technologies capable of investigating ancient monuments without causing damage. Artificial intelligence is helping researchers analyze enormous collections of archaeological data. High-resolution digital models allow engineers to study structural behavior in extraordinary detail. Advanced robotics may soon explore spaces far too small or dangerous for human explorers. Even particle physics continues opening entirely new possibilities. Future muon detectors could create even more detailed images of the pyramid's interior, revealing hidden passages or structural features that remain invisible today. Miniature robotic systems may one day travel through ancient shafts no wider than a human hand. Non-invasive imaging techniques may uncover buried structures beneath the Giza plateau without turning a single shovel of sand. Each technological breakthrough brings us one step closer to answers that previous generations could scarcely imagine. Yet perhaps the greatest lesson of the Great Pyramid is this: some mysteries deserve patience. Not every secret must be forced open immediately. For more than 4,000 years, the pyramid has revealed its story slowly, one generation at a time. Every century has uncovered discoveries that transformed humanity's understanding of ancient Egypt. There is every reason to believe that future generations will continue that journey. Perhaps somewhere behind an unopened wall lies another chamber. Perhaps beneath the desert sands waits an undiscovered temple. Or perhaps the greatest discovery still ahead will not be hidden in stone at all, but in the new questions scientists learn to ask. The Great Pyramid has never stopped teaching us. It teaches humility before history. It reminds us that even in an age of extraordinary technology, there are still wonders capable of challenging our understanding. And perhaps that is why the pyramids continue to fascinate the world, not because every mystery has been solved, but because they remind us that the greatest discoveries often begin with a single unanswered question. The pyramids are far more than enormous monuments rising from the sands of Giza. They are the lasting embodiment of a civilization's greatest dreams, symbols of faith, power, ingenuity, and humanity's timeless desire to overcome death itself. Every stone tells a story of extraordinary vision, relentless determination, and a people who believed that their legacy could endure for eternity. More than 4,000 years have passed since the first blocks were carefully placed beneath the Egyptian sun. Empires have risen and fallen. Wars have reshaped the world, religions have transformed civilizations. Yet the pyramids remain, standing with quiet confidence against the relentless passage of time. They have survived natural disasters, human conflict, and the countless generations that have come and gone, continuing to inspire awe in everyone who stands before them. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how they were built, but why they continue to capture our imagination after so many centuries. Every new discovery reminds us that history is never truly finished, that there are still countless secrets waiting to be uncovered beneath the sands of Egypt. If you enjoyed this journey into the ancient world, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world by leaving a comment below. If you love exploring history's greatest mysteries, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us on our next adventure into the forgotten stories of the past. Until then, thank you for spending your time with us. We hope this journey has filled your mind with wonder and your heart with curiosity. Good night, sleep well, and may your dreams carry you gently through the timeless sands of ancient Egypt. We'll see you in the next story.